Hi, everybody. Welcome to April 13th, 2018 edition of Colorado Inside Out Postgame, a special web-exclusive production here on Channel 12. I'm your host, Dominic Dezzutti. Let's get a quick take on the Democratic and Republican state assemblies taking place this Saturday. That's right. A little over 24 hours from right now, Patty Calhoun from Westward, we will know who came out of the assemblies. Now, a few weeks ago, it was a little bit more of a boring story. Everybody on the Republican side of the big names were going via petitions. So only, I think a lot of the folks, I don't want to be dismissive, but it was the folks that only political junkies even knew could name on the ballot, not really pick out of a crowd, were going to be there. Then Cynthia Kaufman decides to go because it's probably an easy way to get back on the ballot. Then we hear this week that Walker Stapleton has to go because he pulled his own signatures. So it's going to be a much bigger deal, and that's to put aside what's already going to be a crazy Democratic assembly as well. What do you think are going to be the big stories that we hear this time next week?
Well, the big drama is definitely in the Republicans because it was just this week that Walker Stapleton pulled his name off, said don't use the petitions even though he made it, depending on who was going to challenge the signature on those petitions, and he has to get through the assembly. Given the fact that Cynthia Kaufman is the only one with big name recognition, Victor Mitchell arguably has a fair amount too, but it's not going to be hard for him to hit the 30% that he needs to stay on the ballot. But this was certainly a wake-up call for Walker Stapleton and his campaign that they have to run a tighter ship if they really think they're going to win. I think both he and Cynthia Kaufman will emerge on the ballot. In the Democrats, since you know already that Polis, Donna Lynn has been petitioning, Mike Johnston's been petitioning, you know they're going to be on the ballot. But Kerry Kennedy has been one of the really big surprises in this race, that she's doing as well as she does. So there are going to be a lot of people campaigning very, very hard because you're still going to have many credible Democratic candidates, no matter how they get on that ballot June 26th.
David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. How important is the statement made by your representation, even if you're going by petition to get on the ballot? How important is how you come out of the assemblies? Because even though there's 2 ways to get on the ballot, it seems the assemblies get a lot of press, and that's where a lot, at least to me, feels like where a lot of the ground game is. The people who will go out and knock on doors in the 100-degree heat in the summertime go to the assembly. They're the folks who are going to put out signs and make phone calls. Is it important to make an impact tomorrow?
Yes, and not only for the governor's race, but even more so for the other state constitutional officers. I mean, there are contested races on the Democratic side for Attorney General, lots of candidates all around for state treasurer, and also on the Democratic side for Secretary of State. And the candidates who don't do well in those caucuses, or in the assembly there, they have a pretty tough time of finding some kind of route to victory. Whereas you can sometimes skip at the governor's level, you can sometimes skip the convention process and just get on by petition and spend a lot of money. So, for example, back in 1994, Senator Mike Byrd, very well-respected guy, was the choice of the convention, but Bruce Benson got on the ballot by petition, dumped $8 jillion into TV advertising, and won the Republican nomination that way. I think one of the interesting things going on is Mike Johnston, who has so many assets in many ways, including lots of money, much of it from out of state, and a good record on education issues. But apparently he realistically discovered that all the people who were for education reform the way he was were going to Jared Polis primarily. And of course the people who were against education reform, Kerry Kennedy was their person, and her good showing so far shows how strong the Colorado Education Association is as a grassroots mobilizing force in the Democratic Party. So Johnston has sort of had to try a different approach and become the most anti-gun candidate in the race, and we'll see how far that carries him.
Penfield Tate, attorney at QTAC Rock, also a longtime state lawmaker. And because of that experience, Penn, I have a question. what do we need to know? What's kind of the inside look at these assemblies, both the Democrats and Republicans, that may not be the big fat headlines? We saw Walker Stapleton has that's a big splash, and Cynthia Kaufman is name recognition. What is that understory that maybe we're not hearing too much about that we need to know is going to be a big deal at either assembly tomorrow?
You know, I think in the Republican side, what will be a big deal is because Walker Stapleton and his campaign mismanaged the petition gathering process and withdrew their petition so that they wouldn't be faced with a series of lawsuits challenging the petitions, he's now got to go through an assembly process that he really wasn't counting on, and probably he thought that would be the icing on the cake. What we don't know is, number one, how aggressively Cynthia Kaufman's been working that crowd, because she's also been nominated through her assembly before to the post as the nominee for AG. And I don't know how much of a protest movement there will be against Walker because of how he's handled all of this. It was one of the other challengers that brought the petition issue to light. So while it's hard for me to believe he won't hit the 30% threshold, I could conceive of a situation where between, you know, Kaufman and a few of these other folks and folks who decide to remain uncommitted, he might be in for a surprise. So that bears watching on that side. The Democratic side, I don't think there's as much intrigue. Both Donald Lynn and Mike Johnston, they're going petition, and that's it. Jared and Kerry, I don't see either of them being strong enough to stop the other from hitting 30%. I think the key thing to watch will be, as David referenced, some of the down ballot races, because Kerry and Jared have different alliances with some of the down ballot candidates, and they play well with some but not with others. And you know, you look at the Attorney General's race, where one of the Democratic nominees is a pretty strong Bernie guy. And so I don't know if that works either for Jared or Kerry. And so how volunteers shake out and what happens is going to be interesting.
Noelle Phillips rounds out our panel today, the reporter of the Denver Post, also a member of the Denver Newspaper Guild. Noelle, we know your colleagues are going to be covering both assemblies all throughout the Saturday. When it comes to Jared Polis, I'm not sure he was the presumptive front runner as soon as Ed Perlmutter dropped out, but got a lot of the big press because of the pocketbook he brings to the situation. But Kerry Kennedy has secured a lot of the positive headlines, doing well in the caucuses, getting a key endorsement, as David mentioned, from the Colorado Education Association. Does Jared Polis need to make a statement at this assembly to not seem that he's coming in a little more wounded into the heat of the primary season?
Yeah, I think it would be important for anybody to make a strong statement during these assemblies, and then you don't have to rely on the petition method, which, you know, the Stapleton issue, and then the 2016 Senate race, there were issues with the validity of signatures. You don't want Seymour Butts and Amanda Hugginkiss's names on your petition. So it's important, one, you can avoid that mess, and then, yeah, you're going to get the headlines in the Sunday newspaper and on the TV stations that you prevailed. Mm-hmm.
I think somewhere Matt Groening is smiling with your Simpsons reference there. Well done. Yeah. That's all the time we have for CIO Postgame this week. Leave us a comment and tell us what you think. For everyone here at CPT12.org, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks very much for watching.